Welcome to Make the Grade with the Success Doctor, Stephen Green, where you'll discover actionable strategies to help your student to reach their academic goals, to excel at standardized testing, and to plan for the college admissions process painlessly. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Green.
It is that time again, everyone. Welcome back to the Make the Grade podcast. Your host, Stephen Green, the Success Doctor. And today is podcast guest day. I got a guest all the way from Houston, Texas. Houston, Texas. She got a really cool offering, and I think you're going to find this very, very interesting. Her name is Donna Durbin, and her business is called the Clear English Coach. Think about what would that mean to you? What do you think that means? Let me tell you. She specializes in accent reduction and American English pronunciation. I got to really make sure my articulation is good today with Donna here. For individuals who speak English as a second language. And she does this at an intermediate and advanced level. This training helps to modify MTI. Who knows what MTI stands for? I bet Donna does. Mother tongue influence, so they can express themselves clearly and effectively. And this has got to be a really important service, especially in our international world nowadays, where so much customer support is coming overseas and things like that. So welcome, Donna Durbin from Houston, Texas. Welcome to the Make the Grade podcast.
Happy New Year. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate.
I am honored to have you on here. And yes, to those of you who may be listening to this somewhere down the road, it is early January 2022. And the quick weather reported it is snowy and very cold in Philadelphia, and it is probably a lot warmer in Houston on the Gulf of Mexico. But Donna, I find what you do fascinating. And I'm going to tell you why for two reasons, and I want you to talk about it. First of all, I think some people just have a natural aptitude for language. My sister can speak 7 languages. It's unbelievable. You say something once, she has incredible memory for it. English, Spanish, French, Italian, Latin. Do people speak Latin? And 2 Belizean dialects. She's actually a language and social anthropologist and studies this stuff. I, on the other hand, same mother, same father, same gene pool. I'm competent in English, maybe kind of can order a beer in French, and maybe can figure out how to get somewhere in Spanish. So I don't know. Maybe it's just something the way your brains are wired. But talk about what you do. Maybe more importantly, what drove you to start a business like this? Maybe some case studies. So let's start with tell a little bit about yourself, and what led you to starting Clear English Coach.
Well, thank you. I've had a really fascinating journey when I look back at the way my life has traversed. And so I've always been kind of a creative thinker, but I've always loved travel. My father was in the Air Force, so I moved 9 times by the time I was in the 9th grade. So always the new kid on the block and having to make the effort to meet people and get involved and, start over again and again. But my love of language has kind of started from my travel. I didn't get a chance to start traveling till I was in my 40s, I guess. But my first language had been French in high school. And so I traveled to Jonquière, Canada to study French and took, have a minor in French. Not that I speak it fluently, but that's the file cabinet. That's un peu, je parle un peu.
Oh, okay, there you go.
So
international flavor here today.
File cabinet that seems to open when I'm trying to learn a new language. So with my traveling, I wanted to be able to interact with the locals. I mean, I was more of a traveler than a tourist. And so I would stay for a length of time. So I've learned to speak smatterings of the French, Italian, Japanese, Bahasa Indonesian, Thai, and Spanish. So I lived in Thailand for 2 years, and that was when I really had the chance to understand what it means to be an expat and how frustrating it is to try to say words and people don't understand you. So I had, because to supplement my art background, I have actually a master's in fine art and have been a entrepreneur since I was about 25. So with different kinds of jobs, but I've always taught in the university after I finished my MFA. And so since about 1989, I've been teaching in the academic field. So being able to have a flexible schedule, I had a friend invited me to start teaching ESL in University of Houston. And I loved it because I had already been teaching textiles, which is like a foreign language to some people, because it's based on vocabulary and comprehension. And I said, well, I speak English. I should be able to teach ESL. So prior to that, I was a homestay mother for students learning to speak English as a second language in Houston, and they lived with me and we interacted and I provided meals. And so I had a chance to have really the world come travel to me first. And that was my beginning of recognizing how much I wanted to learn about other cultures. So
interesting. Very
yeah,
interesting.
so
By the way, for those of you who may not know, ESL stands for English as a Second Language, which is a designation that somebody who doesn't speak English fluently or completely fluently would be given when they come here to the United States, especially if they're in a school system or something. So can you give us an example? First of all, I think this is an important skill. This is 2022 now, right? We are obviously national countries, but it's become such an international landscape, right? I mean, I was on a Zoom this morning with somebody from Australia and Japan and what's that called? Uruguay. Four of us together. I mean, how could that happen otherwise, right?
Right.
And fortunately, everybody spoke English. The Uruguayan person was very good at English, but otherwise we would have had to speak Spanish and we would have been stuck. But so I think you're doing very important work. Why? Let's get right to a core question. Why is accent reduction so important? Why couldn't somebody just speak with an accent?
Well, there's nothing wrong with an accent. We all have accents. I have an accent. It's what I discovered.
I hadn't noticed. What kind of?
Oh,
y'all.
Well,
you got y'all.
Well, now I don't talk with a real Southern accent, so I can talk like this, and it's a whole lot more Southern. But so I've tried to modify.
Yours is more of a colloquial kind of regional accent as opposed to like Ricky Ricardo, kind of.
Well, I tell people I've lived in the South. My father was in the Air Force, but I've lived in mostly five Southern states,
which is fine. Yes, that's good. Yeah. Nice.
He was from New Jersey actually, and my mother was from Missouri. So we actually had a blend of some accents growing up, but having been so mobile, it learned to kind of modify itself. So it wasn't really.
Let me rephrase the question. Why would a person who feels maybe their accent is an impediment, maybe in their job world, maybe their employment, why would they seek somebody like you out to kind of standardize their language?
Well, what I discovered is that when I was teaching ESL at University of Houston, most of our students had a great knowledge of grammar, reading, and writing. The academic English was very strong, but when they would get up to try to do a presentation, or if they were trying to communicate with an American speaker, they couldn't understand them. Their language, their communication skills were hampered because their accent, they hadn't really learned the basic foundation for modifying their accent enough to not impose their own alphabet on the American alphabet. So they were having trouble really saying words that we couldn't understand. Many times it had to do with articulation, which was the alphabet, and other times it was intonation. Many non-native English speakers sound very flat to us. They don't have the melody that English speakers use. So when you say,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. So let's give an example. So you get somebody who's maybe Spanish. In Spanish, H's are silent.
H's are silent.
So they might say hotel.
But they don't give it any pitch change. Hotel, hotel.
Right. So we're thinking, what's the guy talking about?
We don't know what hotel is. But
right. So what you were suggesting is that they would take the phonetic and grammatical rules of their native language and superimpose them upon English, plus the stylistic presentation of it, and between the two of them, it would become much less understandable to a native English speaker.
Well, think about it.
Yeah, I get it.
Nobody teaches us how to speak with a melody of an American accent. When we are 1, 2, and 3 years old,
Right.
It's what we hear. Our voice develops and our patterns develop by what we hear growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody taught us about intonation in school,
No.
speaking English. So this was something that I had to start recognizing. We didn't teach that in the academic programs either. So when I started,
right, I got you.
And so it's a habit. It's an unconscious habit. And our voices are what we have developed because of what we hear. Our muscles develop because of what we're learning. Our hearing and our speaking go together. Yes. So that's why different languages have different tones and different sounds that they use, because they hear it. Their muscles develop to do that. English uses a lot more articulation of our tongue than other languages do.
Really?
We open our mouth more than other languages do.
You mean in like a linguistic sense, as opposed to just talking?
We use a lot more air. We're filled with a lot of hot air. Americans are filled with a lot of hot air.
You hear that? You heard it here first, folks. Donna. So why? So let me get back to kind of the thing. I'm moving here from Nicaragua. My native language is Spanish. I moved to Houston. I'm trying to get a job as a waiter in a restaurant or customer service, or even in management, whatever I can do. And I come to you and say, Donna, help me. And, so how does this work?
So I would ask them, well, what problems are you having? The number one problem most people have is that they have to repeat themselves. And even repeating themselves, people can't understand them. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating for them, and it's frustrating for the listener. And after a while, most of us won't be very tolerant. Most Americans actually don't speak a second language and don't realize the struggle that it has taken to be able to learn a second language and function in another country. So to me, what I'm trying to do is reduce that frustration, equalize that playing field for them to be able to go through an interview, to be able to have a working knowledge so that they feel comfortable and can be themselves in this second language, and to be effective. I mean, part of it, communication, our voice is our most important communication tool. And if we're using it in a way that is not effective and not able to either influence people or to give a good impression, it affects us. We're either discriminated against. There's a lot of bias and prejudice based on accent. There's a hierarchy with accents, just like other things.
For better or worse.
But this is something that affects you on the phone. It affects you person to person. It really makes a difference on your connection with somebody, your emotional connection with somebody when you're speaking. If they don't understand you, they pretty much dismiss you after a while. Your brain just shuts off and you go, nah, I want to talk to somebody else.
How long does it take for this? I mean, I'm sure it's very variable.
Yes.
But if somebody came to you January 1st and said, Donna, please help me in whatever their accented language was, are they going to be, I can't think of better? How long will it take for them to show some amount of improvement? And how long do you think it might take typically for them to be normalized? My vocabulary is bad, but
neutralized,
I think you know what I'm asking.
Or modified enough.
Modified. Okay. There you go. I didn't know what the correct term there was.
A lot of people ask me that, and I say it's kind of like learning to play piano or going to the gym. It has to do with muscle coordination and control, and it has to do with building muscle memory between your brain and your lips and mouth. If you were going to go to the gym and you only went once a week, how fast would you be able to get in shape? It's going to take a while.
Not at all. Right.
If you do it 3 times a week, you're going to improve that progress. If you do it 5 times a week, it's going to improve even more, because it's the repetition and the consistency is actually the answer to it. It's not rocket science, but I actually teach it with mouth and tongue exercises, because until they learn to control those muscles again and become conscious of how they're using their mouth, and I have all of them use a mirror. They need a mirror, because you've got to help your brain see what your mouth is doing. I have Spanish students that are trying really hard in Spanish, the B and V is not two separate sounds. They say it's very nice. It's very nice because B and V sound the same in their alphabet. So when I tell them in English, our V is underneath our teeth. V. It's very nice. And they can say over and over, it's very nice. It's very nice. They do not have the muscle coordination and control to say very nice.
Really interesting.
First. And so to get them to watch themselves in a mirror so that they can see that your lips do not close for a V. They don't recognize.
I'm saying very firm. Yeah, you're right. You can't. Try saying, hey, people out there, pause for a second. Try to keep your mouth shut and say very. Hey, by the way, I want to introduce everybody, Donna Durbin. John is the guest today on the Make the Grade podcast. This is all about giving you strategies, actions, things to help you accelerate your path to success. And this is a real, I don't want to say problem. This is a challenge for a lot of people. And most of you listen to this probably are English speaking, but imagine it in reverse. If you went to another country, I was in Mexico a little while ago. I'm trying to learn Spanish so I can be a little more fluent. And even if my Spanish was flawless, my accent's never going to be, right? You know what I'm thinking, Donna? Two things. Number one, you're like a personal trainer for voice.
I am.
Yeah, I like that. It sounds like dynamic. And you know what it reminds me of too? One of my mother's favorite movies. You probably know where I'm going with this. My Fair Lady, remember?
I think so. Right.
It's kind of, you're kind of like what was his name?
Higgins.
Professor Higgins and Liza, right?
Mm-hmm.
Liza Doolittle, and the rain in Spain falls immediately on the plane.
That's a great example. I should have my students watch.
Now, in her case, it was English, right? She just had a very Cockney or whatever Welsh kind of English, and he was trying to make her
Cockney.
And he was trying to make her like more of an aristocratic.
It's a very polished, and again, even in Europe, there are they can place you depending on even the part of the London that you live in based on your accent.
Well, we can do that here. You could tell somebody who's from, like, say, Boston versus the South versus the Midwest. I mean, there's definitely.
It's surprising how many non-native English speakers think that there's one accent in America, and I tell them no. There's many accents.
Let me tell you something. This is maybe something I should be careful, but I was in Europe at a point where there was a lot of anti-American sentiment. This was in the late 80s, and not like dangerous, but just it wasn't great. And I would just tell everybody I was Canadian,
right?
And they couldn't tell. I mean, except unless they saw my passport, but which I wasn't showing them. And it wasn't completely untrue because my grandmother was Canadian, but I had never lived in Canada. Right. But it was really a safety thing. I mean, there were some areas where they were just very, especially in some countries, there were some political things that were going on, nothing to do with me or anybody else, but the countries were not getting along, and a non-English speaker has trouble differentiating, like, say, an Australian from an American, from a British, from a Canadian, and English speakers can do that fairly well.
For example, a lot of my Indian speakers and ones from, say, Nicaragua, Nigeria, the ones who learned British English growing up as their second language, because they also have their native language.
Right.
But they recognize that an American accent has different intonation and pronunciation than a British accent. We British accents say water. I want a glass of water. We say water. We have a vocalic R.
You're not from Philadelphia.
We pronounce all of our R's.
Yes, we do.
In a word, rather than just leaving them open. Some of my Spanish and Hindi students always roll their R's. So they roll their R's. So we don't roll our R's in English. So I have to get them to stop that natural habit. It's like an automatic behavior. So it takes them time.
Let me ask you a question. If someone gets through your whole program successfully, and now they're indifferentiable from an American speaker.
Oh, I never promised that.
I'm not saying you promised that. Let's just say it happens. Do they lose their ability to speak in their native language with
Oh
their
no.
accent?
Oh no.
Because
Oh
that's
no.
so ingrained from
You
their.
can default back to that immediately. In fact, I work with people for an hour and a half, and they've really cleaned up a lot of their accent. And the minute we stop focusing on it, they've immediately reverted back to their accent. And I kept saying, wait, what happened? What happened? You just completely went back. And so anytime they're around their family members or they're speaking their own language, it immediately can come back. So that's not something you ever lose. It's like learning to ride a bicycle. You never learn. You never forget. You may have to warm it up a little bit.
Right.
You never forget.
Can you give us a case study? Can you give us a success story? Somebody came to you and
Yes. One of my most recent Hindi students, Booma, who is in Mumbai, India. And when she first started working with me, I guess it's been about 6 months ago, I could barely understand anything she said. Now, you've got to remember, she lives in India. She doesn't have an opportunity to speak English all the time, but she wants to work in America or in an international company. She does a lot of networking. She's doing Toastmasters. She's doing a lot of things to give herself an opportunity to speak English. She started working with me, and my gosh, she worked so hard. She spent anywhere about an hour every day doing the exercises, doing the assignments, doing the practice. Well, about 2 weeks ago, she's continued to improve, and she has really modified her intonation. About 2 weeks ago, she said she won first place in her Toastmasters contest. And I said, oh my gosh, Booma, that is incredible. She says, I used to be over here and now I'm all the way over here. But then she came back and she said, I hadn't been coming to practice for about 2 weeks. And she says, Miss Durbin, I've lost everything. And I said, no, you just need to be refreshed. And within about 15 minutes, she had regained her clearer American articulation and intonation. But she's one of my success cases. She was very committed, very consistent with her practice. And again, she was having to get up at like 6 or 5 a.m. in the morning to be in my coaching calls in the evening. Because I do 2 live coaching calls a week. I do 2 live coaching calls a week. And then they have the digital course that they can go back and do the activities and exercises and recordings and practice. The reason I did this digital course, because in reality, most of my students would practice when they were with me, but they didn't practice in between.
Maybe because they don't have anybody, they may not have anybody to practice with.
Well, these are ones when I was because I was teaching this in person before COVID. And so I had groups in person that I did a lot with. And what they would say is that we've learned so much in the class, but I didn't really practice. So I thought, what can I do to create a way so that it's more of a daily routine for people? And that's when I started designing a digital course that gives 2 to 5 minute lessons. They're not long lessons, but it's to get the consistency and build that habit of checking in and consciously changing your speech for that length of time to build the brain connection and the muscle memory, because you're trying to really create new muscle memory. That's why it takes repetition. When we were learning to spell growing up, we would say the word out loud, we would write it, we would spell it.
Right.
We would say it again. Okay, so that repetition, those many different ways of learning helps to lock it in place. And that's what my students have to do. We respell words to make it sound like what they want it to look like, how they want it to spell. English spelling is crazy. It's all over the place.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, even for American or English speaking people,
even for English speakers,
don't make any sense at all. Like wait, WEIGHT, where'd that come from?
Or no, KNOW.
Yeah, I know.
So part of it, I say, guys,
so many different twos.
That's right.
Hey, how do people get a hold of you, Donna? How would you website clearenglishcoach.com?
Right. And my YouTube channel is Clear English Coach YouTube channel. I get a lot of my clients find me from my YouTube videos. I try to put out very effective, useful, helpful videos out there. So my 15-minute mouth and tongue exercises is on my YouTube channel. And then I have other ones. I also have a 5-day challenge that they can try if they just want to sample working with me. And I have a special offer that on the first Monday of every month, I give a free live coaching accent reduction lesson. And so all they have to do is just they can go to my website, and there is a link that they can sign up for the first Monday coaching session. And it put them into a course that gives them a reminder that time is coming up. And then they sign on to Zoom, and we have a chance to have a lesson, introductions, and practice together.
So that will be clearenglishcoach.com. Might as well, hey, take the free lesson. Why not? Hey, two things real quickly. You know where you would do well? Because I've done a lot. I spent a lot of time in Mexico and in Dominican Republic and some of these places. There's such a need for good English speaking people in resorts. Now, of course, they cater, their tourism is 90% of their economy, and people learn English. I mean, this is sort of a sad statement. They learn English just so they can get a job as a waiter in a resort, which I guess for better or worse is a good situation for some people in this situation.
So hospitality,
yeah. But now, just to be clear, you don't teach English per se. You're not you're not instructing them on how to learn English.
No.
You're taking a person who's more or less communicative or maybe fluent.
They have a working knowledge. They have a working knowledge. And actually, most of my clients have been working in an English environment for several years. I have one client that's been living in the United States for 30 years. And she still has such a strong accent that she wanted to improve it. She's very much motivated about self-improvement. Many of my clients find that they get locked into a position. I had one Indian student that said that he's trained English speaking the technology, but they moved past him and he's still in that same position. And yet the ones he trained are now his boss, even though he trained them. He said it's because they speak English better than I do. So his accent, has put a limit on the level of put a ceiling on his advancement in his career. And that's what a lot of people that find me individually have discovered, is that they can't move past being behind the computer screen and start doing meetings, start having leadership roles, because they're either feeling insecure about their speaking, or they have to repeat themselves, or people just don't take them as the authority. I had one doctor I worked with, and he said, I'm the specialist, and yet they'll turn to my nurse and ask her what I said. He said, I don't want this. I want a team. I want to be able to be effective. And so I have worked with him to improve his English. Now he works in ICU. He works in intensive care.
Clearly he's an intelligent person. He's hamstrung because of the language barrier.
Intelligence doesn't have anything to do with an accent.
Right. Well, that's what I meant. He's being held back in the environment he's in because of his inability, or the inability of people to understand him as well.
Patient-doctor relationship suffers because he can't speak English clear enough. And when we think about our medical field, we have lots of people from other countries that are in the medical field now, and many of them we have difficulty understanding. But they're
one of the biggest complaints I get from students
is what?
I do not mean this in any xenophobic or whatever way, especially in college and math, is that a lot of the TAs are from Taiwan teaching math, and they can't understand them.
I had the same experience.
They're brilliant calculus people, but they don't know how to teach, and the accent is prohibitive. And again, I'm not saying this to denigrate anybody, but it's a common complaint I get from kids I work with, like in my tutoring.
And part of that really issue is that the university does not provide.
Yeah, well, right. They're not doing anything.
The language difficulty, because I myself experienced, I had a Vietnamese TA that I was taking algebra from, and I couldn't understand anything he said. And it was frustrating. And I mean, he was doing the very best he knew how. Right. It wasn't that he didn't know the material, but his communication skills were lacking. So that's where I really passionate.
Well, let me sum this up a little bit. Donna has a course, digital course called ABCs of the American or an American accent, 1-year coaching program, and they transform lives. I assume they can check this out at clearenglishcoach.com, right?
Yes, they would have to schedule a call with me. I interview every student that is interested because not all students are really qualified to be in that course. And then if they're interested in just learning more basic English, I encourage them to find other programs that can help them with their grammar, their vocabulary, that kind of thing. Because I don't teach that. I work on their speaking only. And I would say from the experience of my current clients is that it is challenging for them, even when they know English, they understand it, they have a working vocabulary for it, but to learn to change their delivery, their voice and their accent uses a different part of their brain than the other part. It's an unconscious part and you really have to wake it up. So they say most of them, it takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months, sometimes 9 months, sometimes a year. So that's why I designed this course, that they can self-graduate before that, but they have a lifetime access to the lessons and the materials. But I have found that realistically, it takes at least 6 months to a year to change. Think about if you go to the gym or if you go learn to play piano.
Any habit is going to take effort and consistency.
Exactly.
Is there anything? Hey, this is the Make the Grade podcast. Your host, Stephen Green. Donna Durbin, Clear English Coach, is with us today. Donna, is there anything we didn't get to you want to get to real quick before we wrap up and have our fun game?
I would just say that, I respect so much the people that leave their homes, leave their families, and try to start over in an English speaking environment. And if there's anything, I believe that what I'm doing is really providing them the next advanced level to really improve their delivery and communication skills so they can succeed and be themselves and reach their potential. We need their talents and their skills in the world.
There you go. And that's a big, those of you who are fans and subscribers of the podcast know that's a big theme here, working to your potential. Donna, let's try something fun. You ready? I do it with all my guests. I know Donna's shocked and surprised, but
I don't know what's going to happen.
Is this easy? I call this my fave 5.
Your fave 5? Oh my gosh, I may not.
I'm gonna just say something. You tell me. You give me your first. What your favorite thing is? Okay.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
No, we're gonna start with a very easy one.
Okay.
Dessert.
Pie.
Any particular kind? I'm thinking
strudel, like a strudel pie. Apple, cinnamon, strudel.
Apple. I love apple crumb. Okay. Well,
something like that.
Music.
Blues.
Oh yeah.
Blues.
There we go. I think you're the first person ever said that.
Really? Oh, okay.
I think so. Place to vacation.
Oh, Bali.
Really?
Bali, Indonesia. Right.
Wow.
If I was going to go someplace, that was my favorite part of the world. That's my favorite place in the world.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Dog person. Okay. Ketchup, mustard, or salsa? You're from Texas, so I think I know where this is going.
Ketchup.
Dang, I had you a salsa girl.
No. I don't eat chilies. I don't eat peppers. I can't.
No picante. No picante.
No jalapeno.
No, okay.
No, and that's why that's in Thailand. It was.
Where do you eat in Houston? Yeah, where did you eat in Thailand? It's like
really. My side prick, my pet. No, not hot. No peppers.
No,
it was very hard to eat. It was very hard to eat.
Anything on your bucket list you want to share?
I want to go to Barcelona.
Barcelona.
Barcelona. Last year I checked off one which was to do a hot air balloon ride, and I did that last year in Scottsdale, outside of Scottsdale. So Barcelona is next one.
Adrenaline junkie.
No, I don't know that it was that. It wasn't that.
Was the hot air balloon. That sounds like one of those things that'd be really cool. I'm afraid of heights. I've shared that. People know that about me. I don't know if I could get in a hot air balloon.
But it's quiet.
I'm sure it is.
You don't have any resistance.
Yeah, but Don, you're talking to somebody. I'm kind of even afraid. I'm afraid to look out the window of a plane. I don't know where it came
Oh, well,
from.
I don't know. I found it fascinating. I would say that the more the thrill was doing the zip line in the jungles in Costa
Zip lines I like. I've done zip lines in Costa Rica and the Dominican and
Rica.
Mexico.
You can do a hot air balloon.
I guess I could always stand in the middle of it and everybody else on the.
Well, it's amazing because you don't feel any air resistance because you're floating with it. So there's no like draft or whatever. There's no, you're just with it.
I think there's one of these in Chicago too, but they build a building in Philadelphia. It's like 50 stories high, and there's an observation deck at the top where there's a glass floor.
I don't like doing that so much.
No way.
I don't like that.
And there's a restaurant there's like a restaurant kind of bar there, and you can go out to where there's glass floor. It's a beautiful view of the city. But I mean, you're literally like looking through your feet, like 50 floors down.
That kind of gives me the thrill. I mean,
that was a little weird. I can't handle it. Okay. Let's see if we can do last one. Beverage.
Oh, water.
Wow. Okay.
Water.
I will not share some of the answers I've gotten from other people, but I think you can know where we're going. Listen, I want to thank Donna Durbin, Clear English Coach. Her business is clearenglishcoach.com. I think this is this is pretty unique. I've had hundreds of people on this podcast, and this is a kind of your own little niche. Many success coaches and academic things and things like this. But I think this is a fascinating thing. And I think you're doing a great service for the people who need it. And I think it's kind of just a statement of where we are, kind of in the state of our world. This is, we all want to try to support each other and be a little more sensitive to people's realities and things like this. And I think what you're doing is great. So
I want to thank you too. I'm very honored to be on here, Stephen. So thank you so much for the opportunity. And I think I'm bringing my part to contribute to peace in the world.
There you go.
Because when we can communicate with each other and understand that we're more alike than different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that when I've traveled, I've always really recognized that I can learn a lot from these other countries. And it helps me not only appreciate what I have in my country, but it also helps me see that there's a lot of things that are missing in my country that other countries have.
Yeah, I think on a human level, people get along a lot better if we just dropped all the pretenses and then some of the things that are just sort of imposed upon us. But that's another discussion. All right. Once again, let me implore everyone, reach out to Donna, clearenglishcoach.com, see what's going on with her. Maybe try her Monday class.
Yeah.
This is the Make the Grade podcast. If you liked what you heard today, and by the way, I got a little secret for you. It's the first time Donna was ever on a podcast. Can you believe it? Let's have a big hand for her. Hang on. Can you hear that? I'm just not coming through on you. The audience is cheering. Here we go. Let me do it again. There we go. Now, this is Donna's first podcast, but she's clearly a professional. She's got a lot of experience in this. This is the Make the Grade podcast. Our goal is to give you, the listener, things you can take action with, things that you can do to accelerate your journey to success. We have got some really interesting guests coming up. I've got some really good solo podcasts coming out. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe. More importantly, please share this with other people, because I think, honestly, the more people that hear this information, the more people have access to it, the more people we are able to help and put in a better situation in their lives. So until next time, let's roll the music. There we go. We'll see you again. Thanks again, Donna.
Thank you, Stephen. This was great. Really had a good time. Thanks again.
All right, here we go.
You've been listening to Make the Grade with the Success Doctor, Stephen Green. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe. For more resources and support, please visit makethegrade.net.